Hi, friends. Do you ever wonder what your life would be like if you didn't work and you could dedicate your time to yourself and fulfilling your dreams? I'm Carol, and I share tips and strategies to help women in their 40s, 50s, and beyond get out of their rut and begin to live the life that they envision. Stephanie Perry in a YouTube short said, "Nothing transforms a Black woman's life like taking a career break." And today we're going to talk with a woman who took a year-long career break or sabbatical. And we're going to learn how she prepared for it, how she practiced her self-care during that time, and then how she reacclimated to a traditional work life. So I'm here with my guest, Lillian O'Neill, a nurse who's done a phenomenal thing, and that is she took a year-long sabbatical. And during that time, we're going to explore what she did, how she prepared for it, and also how she reacclimated to going back to a more traditional situation. So Lillian, thank you for joining me today. Just full disclosure for the audience, Lillian is my sister, phenomenal human being, exemplary nurse, and I'm so happy that she's able to share this experience with you, and we can talk about this phenomenal experience of taking a career break. So to get us started, uh, what was your life like, or what was your experience before you decided to take this career break?
Okay, so the first thing I want to explain is that nursing is a career that gives you many different paths. So most people think of a nurse as in a clinical setting, but I've done many different things in nursing. I've been a nursing instructor, and I've been in nursing management and home care. And most recently, when before my sabbatical, I was the head of my department for an insurance company that serviced exclusively Medicare recipients. And my job and the job of my team was to instruct physicians and physician groups on how to meet Medicare guidelines. So most people don't think of things like that when they think of nursing, but nursing is a tremendous career. It gives you a lot of different options.
So when you decided to take this break from nursing, you were a few years away from traditional retirement.
Yeah.
So it seems like you're a risk taker. Describe that time. What was that like before you took the break and what you did there?
Okay, so I'm just going to address the term risk taker. I'm actually not a risk taker, but I am pretty fearless. So when I decide to make changes, I don't consider it a risk because I consider the things before I do it. So, but about 2 years prior to taking this break, I was working in a job that I loved. It was a great company. I loved the people I was working with. It had great benefits, and I could set my own schedule. And I traveled for work every single week. So it was really a job that I enjoyed, but my children and I would take a week to the beach. And we spent a week at the beach in a really nice location. We were having a wonderful time. And on the drive back home, I cried the entire time thinking of going back to work, all the emails that would be waiting, all the phone calls I had to return. And I really thought about that. And this is a job I loved, but I just couldn't bear the thought of getting back to the mechanics of corporate life. I'm actually a master of corporate ease, the language you have to speak in corporate America. I was really good at my job, but the day-to-day, returning the phone calls, answering the emails, I realized I really was not looking forward to going back to that. So I started thinking of what I might want to do instead. And then by a year later, I had just had enough of it. And I decided to take a year off and inhale and exhale.
So do you call that, did you call it a sabbatical, a reset, a refresh, a pivot point? How did you describe when you made that decision and what you were going to do?
I did call it a sabbatical because I knew that I would not be unemployed indefinitely. But for me, it was really refresh and recharge. I just really needed to recharge my batteries.
Yeah. So had you thought about retiring early?
I had not actually thought about retiring early because nursing is a career where you can work as long as you want to. I had thought about retirement, and after retirement, doing whatever job I wanted to, but I just moved that forward.
So how long was this sabbatical period for you?
It was 12 months almost to the day.
And did you intend to step away from traditional work for that long?
Yes, that was intentional. I knew that I could take a year because in thinking about it, people say you should have 3 months of living expenses banked or 6 months, and I had 12 months. So I knew that I could take that time off without feeling compelled to return to work.
So that's really good to know. Yes, we are told by those financial experts to have your emergency fund. How did you prepare financially for that time that you plan to take off?
Okay, I had literally been preparing for years because, as many women experience after my divorce, my credit was absolutely terrible. And in my instance, I hadn't worked in 16 years because I had to raise my children. My husband was a specialist. No one else could do his job. Someone had to raise the children. But I went back to work a year after my divorce. But in that time, I also had to get back into my profession, and I had to repair and rebuild my credit. So one thing I did was, the first thing I did, pay your bills on time. That became the foundation for everything. And I was very intentional about this. When I returned to work, I have a motto: pay yourself first, so that you always have an emergency fund. And I stuck to that. The other thing I did was, when I got new credit cards in my name, I never carried a balance. In 20 years, I have never had a balance on a credit card. And people say, well, how is that possible? Live within your means. I didn't consider credit cards a way to get what I wanted. I considered credit cards an emergency fund. Like if I have to take a plane trip with all of my children, I can pay for this without access to the bank. For instance, where I live, we have storms. Sometimes ATMs aren't open, so you have to have an emergency fund. That's the way I looked at credit cards. So I also live well below my means. I never have to worry about getting a job because I'm a nurse. Nurses are employable 100% of the time in some capacity. So that helped me be fearless about if and when I needed to go back to work. But what I suggest to people, if they're not nurses, consider what your skill set is. How do those skills apply to various jobs? And that can help a person be less fearful of changing jobs. So those were the things I did to prepare. I realized what my skill set was. I'll give you an example. Teaching physicians how to meet Medicare guidelines. Few things are more boring. So I realize I'm not easily bored, have a lot of patience. I have attention to detail. Those are marketable skills. People don't necessarily associate that with nursing, and they don't have to be restricted to nursing. So I know what my skill set is. I know what kind of jobs I am able to get. So I saved, I prepared, so that, let's imagine that I got laid off, which I never have been, but if I had been, I was prepared financially and mentally, because I know that I can use my skill set to pivot to a new type of employment.
That's really important. I think a lot of people don't really evaluate how the skills that they have in their one job or their career can be transferable. And in my capacity of training leaders in leadership development, the skills that are most difficult for me to shape and mold in people are these skills with emotional intelligence, understanding people, working within systems or organizations. And people really do, especially women, discount those kinds of things: managing household, managing projects, managing multiple schedules, and knowing your worth in those things is really important, especially for women at any age, at any age.
One other thing that I did to prepare, this is just what worked for me. I read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People every single year for the last 30 years, because we can forget in 12 months what we learned before. And then in my last job, I had a budget, an education budget. So one of the things I did was to take formal Dale Carnegie training. Those skills are really important when you have to learn how to achieve your goals without making your goals primary. You have to help your client achieve their goals. And in doing so, you achieve your goals. Those skills that you were just referring to are hard to know intuitively, but we can learn them. And Dale Carnegie wrote the first book on management skills. And for me, it's the one that I refer to most frequently.
And I will link to those in the show notes and in the description, so that if that's something that you're interested in, you can find that book and read up on it yourself. Now, you said that you financially prepared and you kind of professionally prepared. What was your social preparation like? How did you get yourself geared up for this? Did you explain your plans to other people, and how did they react?
That's a good question. Believe it or not, I'm an introvert, so I have like a business persona, but left to my own devices, I spend a lot of time by myself. So I didn't ask anybody's permission to do this. I just made the choice. But I did tell people after I had quit my job. And I was talking to people during the time that I was preparing to leave my job, training my replacement, those kind of things. And people were always astonished that I had done it, because they knew I loved my job. And people kept asking me, oh my God, what are you going to do? Do you need to find another job? Do you need some contacts? And I said, no, I'm taking a year off. People find that hard to believe, because they don't know if they could do that. And people kept offering me jobs. I got a lot of calls saying, well, since you're not working there, would you like to work here? And I said, no, I'm taking a year off.
And during that time, how did you choose to spend your time?
Okay, so the first thing I did was just decompress. Sometimes when we're on the treadmill, we don't realize that we're on it. So this is going to sound very simplistic, but I actually live by this. I started drinking more water. I really believe in the power of water. And we're water creatures. So I was drinking more water and I maintained my general health. I eat clean, I get enough sleep. Those are the kind of self-care things that we may not do as much as we need to when we're meeting schedules, returning calls, especially I was the head of my department, so I had a lot of people to be responsible for and to. Additionally, I did yoga, meditation. I continued to mentor the people that I was mentoring. And I made a handmade bed-size quilt for the person that I mentored most. It's very meditative and repetitive, very relaxing. That took 5 months to make that quilt. I worked on it every day. She was very surprised by it, and I got a lot of satisfaction out of
it. And I know the people who are watching don't know, but you do incredible artistic quilting with incredible themes, traditional themes, more eclectic and exciting themes, but they're all hand stitched. So if you are a quilter, you do that. What's that? That half-inch stitch that you do?
I can do 10 to 12 stitches to an inch.
Yes. Yeah. And that's deep work. And that really that helps us become more productive. So,
yes, and that was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to add the fact that you still worked with your mentees. That really said something. What do you think they learned from you during that period when you took that time off?
Well, I hope they learned fearlessness from me. And also, I hope they learned that we can continue to support people even if our position in life changes. I really have a commitment to helping women advance in business because I think no one gets there by themselves. We've all had people to help us. It helps if someone in your industry is helping you to learn the ropes. And I have a commitment to we all move forward together. So your success diminishes me in no way. And my primary mentee, I hired her. So her success makes me look like a genius. She now heads the department that I used to head. She created a new position for herself, and I was happy to help her do that. After I left the company, she was still developing that department. So we worked on that. First, she calls me, she vents, and then I say, okay, now how are you going to address this issue? Then she strategizes. We talk about the pros and cons of methodologies. The company went through a restructuring. And so in addition to the new position that she had created, she has absorbed my old department. So it's a win-win situation for us. And I have some other people that I also mentor. I just really believe in women helping women to get ahead.
Same here. That's a wonderful sentiment. That's a wonderful way to live your life, especially your professional life. Sometimes organizations will um, put women in adversarial positions, or people feel that that's the way that they have to get along. And kind of the nature of women's relationships is usually cooperative and supportive. So, just bringing that on in the professional sense is really a strong viewpoint.
Right.
But I want to get back to, what your sabbatical life was like outside of mentoring, continuing to mentor. What did you find surprising about this time?
The thing that was most surprising is how busy I could be without a job. That was really surprising. And also, if you don't have a job, sometimes people assume you have nothing to do. So they say, well, you're not doing anything. Can you do this for me? And actually, a lot of times it was easy enough for me to work into my schedule. Um, People see doing things for yourself as not necessarily an occupation, which is why a lot of women tend to neglect themselves. I realized that this was an investment in myself. And so while it looked like I wasn't doing anything, it doesn't mean that I wasn't doing anything. So I would have to schedule activities, and I'm very big about having a planner, and I schedule everything I have to do. One, because people's time is valuable, and two, I don't like to be late. So I always put a reminder on my phone when I have to be somewhere and do something for someone. But it also teaches me to respect my time and the time of others. So it was surprising to find how busy I could be. And people kind of tend to think, well, you used to do this and you had this title and now you're not doing anything. And they feel a little sorry for me. But actually, I feel empowered by the position.
So, what advice or tips do you have for anyone else who might be considering taking a break from work or a sabbatical or reset, recharge, however they want to phrase it?
Okay, so the first thing I would suggest is to be intentional. Plan for it, but also visualize it happening in the way that you want it to. I am very intentional in the things that I do, and I'll give you an example. I never apply for more than one job at once. I have never sent out more than one resume at a time because I do my homework and I see what is the job that I want and the job that fits my qualifications. And then I very intentionally apply for that position and prepare for that interview. It has worked for me about 100% of the time. So be intentional. The other thing is value your time. So if you're going to take time off, decide how much time off you want and commit to that amount of time. I wanted 12 months off and I took 12 months off. Not everyone can do that and not everyone wants to do that. The other thing is plan for it financially in a way that works for you. I didn't have small children when I did that. I didn't have to concern myself with anyone else's needs or schedule. So I had a lot of flexibility. I know some people don't have that much flexibility, but plan for it in a way that works for you financially. And don't be afraid of changing. That's the biggest thing. Don't be afraid to do something different than you have done before if you're using your interests, your skill set, and your particular set of circumstances as your basis for doing this. That's how we learn to do new things. That's how we stretch ourselves. Oh, there's one more thing that I did while I was on sabbatical that I think is important. I had a commitment to charity before I went on sabbatical, and I had to find a new way to do that. When I was commuting to work, I knew all of the homeless people between my house and my job. And so every week I would take a certain amount of money out of the bank. And when I would encounter these people, I would give them this money. This is something I did, has nothing to do with them, lets me be charitable. And when I wasn't commuting again, I had to find new creative ways to do that. But I think if we don't continue to give, we don't receive.
Mhm.
So I think that's very important. Like, whatever changes you're going to make sure that you can stick to your own values while you're doing it.
That's really important. And thanks for sharing that special piece about giving and charity and sharing when you have a little extra to share.
Right.
Now, once your 12 months was over,
Mhm.
how did you reacclimate to working life?
Okay. So I literally said, okay, I have a belief. Sometimes we have to take a job, even if it's not the job. So I thought, well, I'll take this job to get back into the workforce. And so I knew I would get the job because I have 10 years of experience in home care management. So I applied for a job in home care management, but actually someone else at the company wanted me to be her assistant, and that was in the compliance department. So this is where my skill set comes in. I said, well, I know I can do that job because I'm not easily bored, which is really important when you spend your days reading statutes, ordinances, and the United States Code, because I was reading statutes, writing policy, revising policy, coming up with company values, things like that. It's very tedious and it can be extremely boring. I happen to love it. And also, I have a particular skill. I read about 3 times faster than the average person. You and I worked a job at the same time together. And that's how I found out that I worked faster. We were readers. That was our title. Most people could read 2 packs of essays a day. I could read 6 with accuracy. And so this job that I hadn't even thought about getting was sort of tailor-made for my skill set. So I was willing to take a job because I knew I could do it easily. And then I found the job inadvertently.
So during that reacclimation period, what happened socially? Was that a big change?
Well, this is very interesting. The first day that I was at the job, I was at our corporate headquarters, and I said to my boss, who I had worked with 10 years before, I said, can we agree today we will have work-life balance? Come in at 8, leave at 5. She said, I'm all about that. 2 days later, the pandemic started. So she said, well, as of today, you and I are working from home. And then the next Monday, the country went on lockdown. So fortunately, I like being by myself. So that worked wonderfully. And then as people acclimated to working conditions, I had an office that was remote from our corporate headquarters. And so I had a few people in the office with me, and I gained a new mentee while I was there, because that was a person who she did the job for that company. She also had a company that she had started on her own, and I started being her mentor, and I still am.
Now, you took your sabbatical, pretty close to traditional retirement age. Would you recommend that, or would you recommend that people take time away earlier in their careers?
Probably I could, well, so personally for me, I had taken 16 years off. So I had a break. But then when I went back to work, I worked 15 years without any significant break. I worked a lot. So I would suggest to people, if they're going to take a sabbatical, take it earlier in your career. For me, because of my skill set, it didn't really matter when I took it. Let me qualify that. I am not ambitious. I have done very well in my career. I've regularly gotten promotions, but I don't seek them. So if someone is more ambitious, they may feel that they have to work for a certain amount of years in order to establish themselves. So the person just has to know themselves and what they are looking for in a career. But I would suggest most people probably don't want to take a sabbatical so near the end of their working career. It just worked out very well for me.
So, I think of that time for a reset as a way to reinvigorate yourself and to live your life differently. How did that career break change you?
Okay, so I will never again take a job that I don't want to do. And before, I was working jobs that I liked, but when I still had a mortgage, I had a more compelling reason to work a job that I may not have liked as much as I might like another one. But years before I took my sabbatical, I had paid off my mortgage and I had absolutely no bills. My cars were paid for. I literally had no bills, and most people don't find themselves in that position, but I had worked to put myself in that position. So I had more choices about what job I would do. So I actually plan on returning to work sometime within the next year with this stipulation. I have some things that I do with my grandchildren. Whatever job I take cannot interfere with that. The other thing is, it has to be personally gratifying for me. Well, nursing is a personally gratifying career for me. So if it may be in nursing because of the flexibility it offers, but another interest of mine is adult literacy. I have been in the past literacy educator, and I'm going to explore that avenue also, because when one teaches someone how to read, it changes their life. So it would be great if I could get paid for doing that, but even if I can't, I still plan to do that. I had planned to do it a few years ago, but the pandemic brought all of that to a halt. It's hard to teach adults how to read on a computer, because if you can't read, you can't use the computer as well as you might.
Yes. So, when I hear your story and your experience, it sounds like, you have to make sure that you get your financial life in order. And for each of us, that's different, but you do have to find a budget that works for you, be able to save, and reevaluate your wants and needs, because I think that's a piece that people misunderstand. really be, very specific about what is it I want, what is it I need. And that idea of paying yourself first is so important so that you're not feeling deprived. What
Right.
I also heard you say is that you really took an inventory of your skills,
Mm-hmm.
whether you were applying those skills in your chosen profession or not. What are the skills that I have that are unique? What's my competitive advantage that I can transition to whatever role I have? And then also, you really focused on the true meaning of self care and making sure that your physical and your emotional were in order.
Yes.
So, and that you also made sure that you did that other component, which was giving to others that truly had the need. So, in your charity work, in your mentorship. So,
Mm-hmm.
those sounds like four really great pillars of living a good life.
Yeah. It served me well, and I try to be mindful of helping others, especially women, because I've had women in my life who have been mentors to me, who have really helped me to move my career forward with their advice. Also, when I was in nursing school, I had a group of friends who gave me rides to my clinical setting. I didn't have a car. I absolutely could not have completed nursing school at a very competitive university without their help. So we help others in ways small and large. And then I had an aunt who was extremely successful in her field, and she was a mentor to me, and she modeled mentorship. She advocated for mentorship, and um, I like to pass that on because whenever I work with my mentees, I always remind them they must pay it forward. They cannot expect to continue to do well if they're not helping others move ahead.
So, you've done your sabbatical, you return to work for a period.
Mhm.
You're in this also, I would say, probably a transition point there with retirement, in making retirement, molding that into the image that you want. What's next for you?
So um, I'm thinking of getting certification in two areas of nursing. I am a pediatric specialist, but because of my working in Medicare for a long time, I learned a lot about adults and how they care for themselves or fail to care for themselves. So I'd like to get certification in gerontological nursing also. And I plan to do that in the time that I'm off. Why not? I can come out of, retirement with these two certifications, which increases my employability, and I can afford to be selective in where I choose to work because nursing is a very demanding career. I want to probably return to clinical nursing, and it's extremely demanding and exhausting. But with these certifications, and because I'm not pressured to return to work, I can be very selective in the job that I choose, but I want it to be a job where I feel that every time I go to work, I am truly helping people.
Well, that sounds wonderful. So those are great steps for for, what is this, your third career?
Third, fourth, fifth, yes, I've done a lot of different things.
Okay, so thank you very much for sharing about your sabbatical experience, how you prepared for it, how you provided your self-care during that period, and your next steps. So,
Can can I share one more thing with you?
absolutely.
Um, I taught my son these basic principles, and of course, he is an artist. And he employed these same techniques so well that when the pandemic started, I was like, well, son, do you need any help? Because, you know, tattooing people, that's 100% disposable income. If people don't have disposable income, you don't have any income. He said to me recently, he said, Mom, you know, if you do the thing that fits your skills and you're happy at it, you can make a great living. And he said, most people wouldn't think that I make over 6 figures a year drawing pictures. But he does that because he knows his skills, he knows his target audience, and he does what he loves. And it's the same principles that I employ, but in a completely different field. So I share that experience to let people know that whatever it is that you do, you can pivot, you can change if you know what your skill set is, plan for it, prepare financially, move with intention, with an eye to helping others.
Thank you. That is brilliant. And might I add, he does phenomenal work.
Yes.
Well, that's great. I think we're going to end it here because that was the perfect ending. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed this video on taking a career sabbatical. Please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you know when I upload new videos. If you're contemplating taking a career break, here are some other videos that you might enjoy watching. Watch my video, You Don't Need Permission to Live the Life of Your Dreams, and Reclaim Your Winning Spirit. All of the links will be in the description box. Till next time, thanks for watching Pivot to Wholeness.